Hello, I'm Sarah, and today I'm going to be talking about having an identity crisis. So if you've been feeling like you don't really know what you like anymore, or how you want to come across, or what makes you happy, and you just feel kind of overwhelmed, and instead of inspired, you feel discouraged, you might be having an identity crisis. So I think this happens a lot when we change environments, like we go to a new school, start a new job. Or it might just happen as you're growing up and you suddenly feel different from how you did in the past, but you don't really know what it is exactly. I think this is because we often place our identity and self-worth on external things like roles, the people that we're around, things that we create, the things that we do, the things that we think. All of these things are external from who I think we are inside, so that when one of these things changes, we kind of lose ourselves a little bit. So I ask you a question that my friend once asked me, which is, who are you if you strip everything else away? I think it's a tough question to answer, but I think if you can place your self-worth more on that feeling underneath all those things, you will save yourself so much time and so much worry. Personally, what happened to me was I felt so paralyzed by having choice of like what I wanted to be that I ended up like not really choosing anything for a while, feeling like I was agreeable when I knew I wasn't, only to figure out that no matter how you are, there are pros and cons to every way of being. So you might as well just save yourself time and be yourself. And that really made me understand the difference between self-improvement and changing yourself. It is a very fine line, but I think if you find a balance between it, I think you will be much more content with the ways that you are. So 2 years ago, I made a video about this, and a couple months ago it started getting a bunch of views and is now the most popular video on my channel. So I thought I'd follow it up with another video because I feel like I have different opinions now than I did then, 2 years later. So in my last video, I said that the goal is to not think about labels, which I disagree with. Now I think that a possible goal is that you become content whether you use labels or not. If using labels helps you, then use them. But if they feel limiting, you also don't have to. But as long as you're like okay with where you stand in that, I think that is more closer to the goal than just not using labels at all. In the video, I also touched on having supportive people around you and not having toxic people in your life. So I think a pretty good gauge for that is if you're around someone and like on the inside you just don't feel that great, that's usually a pretty accurate way to tell that maybe you should not put quite as much energy into that person and maybe like take a step back and like reevaluate. But you know, take that with a grain of salt. Like if it's your parents, you have to put up with them, so. And in my last video, people in the comments were saying that they wanted to do something, but they were scared that like it wouldn't feel like them. And I think personally, I feel more satisfied doing things that feel good to me rather than feel like me. I think you should let yourself try things regardless of how you will judge yourself or how others will judge you. And if you only do things that feel like you probably won't change as much as you could. And change is good, even though it feels hard sometimes. I think ultimately change is growth and you learn from it. I think it's also important to surround yourself with the things that you love. And I think it's okay to be made up of a little bit of everything that you love. Kind of like a human collage. And something I didn't talk about in my last video was
social media.
I think social media really complicates things in figuring out your identity because humans are very complex. They can't be defined with pictures or words or anything that you post. Like, I don't think it really gets at who we are. Humans are a lot more than that. So I think it makes things a lot harder because we look up to these people that are basically businesses and we think we need to brand ourselves as people, but they are typically selling something to us, whether that be their personality, in which case they do have to make it more simple because it's a business model. They can't have it so complex and they need to have a very distinct identity, but we don't. People don't have to do that unless you're trying to sell something. In that case, separate your identity from your business. And you don't need to only do things that fit your aesthetic, and you don't have to pick one passion or one interest. Humans are multifaceted. Another thing I didn't talk about in the other video was that certain things can make figuring out your identity a little bit different for everyone. For example, mental health disorders. They make it different for everyone. So if that applies to you, then look at everything that I'm saying but through the lens of whatever mental health disorder you have. Other things that make it more complicated are gender identity and figuring out your sexual orientation. And it's especially hard if you're in an environment that doesn't inherently accept you. So if no one accepts you, I accept you. But it just makes it a lot harder, and I think each one of those topics deserve their own video because there are specific cases and things. This video is more general, so if you look at it through the lens, it might make it more helpful. In my last video, I also talked about different things that you could do to help yourself kind of be more in touch with yourself. And I agree with most of the things I said in that, but I want to add a couple things. So I want to add the concept of meditation, which can look different for everyone. It could be literally sitting, which is how most people think of it, or it could be writing, or it could be music, or it could be dancing, or it could be taking a walk or brushing your teeth. It can be basically whatever, as long as you have the intention of it being a meditation, which is typically to connect to a higher consciousness. It's just taking a moment to kind of take a step back and observe everything. And I think it is a very helpful tool. You know, it relieves stress and has a bunch of benefits. So if you can find whatever that is for you, I think that is very helpful. Another thing that I think is helpful is putting yourself on the spot in some way, like getting out of your comfort zone, whether that be with like creating or like improv, acting, like anything like that, putting yourself in new situations. If you don't have enough time to think about how you're going to act, you just act, and the way that you act and the things that you create are a very pure expression of who you are, and that's one thing, but then to not judge those things immediately is another thing, and that's something that I am currently working on, but I think it is a journey, and yeah. So I also invite you to think about, what if you had everything figured out? What if you knew exactly who you were? And I think that would mean closing yourself off from new opportunities to change because you're already too settled in who you are. So I think if you are feeling unsure about who you are, you're kind of more open to interpretation, and it's all about perspective, really. If you can just enjoy where you're at, you will save yourself so much time. Yeah, so I would say be patient with things because things will change and they will change again. And to try to sit with the discomfort of how you're feeling. I know it's so uncomfortable. I know it's not the most fun thing in the world, but if you can just like sit with it and observe it and not try to numb it and not try to change it or get rid of it, just like accept it, I think that's a very powerful thing. And from my experience, the feeling will come back. I still feel this way every day around like 4 p.m. So if it's going to happen again and again, you might as well make a friend with it. A quote that I heard recently was, "Accept yourself for who you are, not who you want to be." And that made me take a step back because I think I was accepting myself for who I was at my best and who I wanted to be, not who I just was. So I think that is a really, really good idea. Jacob Collier was the one who said that. And just know that a lot of people feel the same way. You're not alone. Try not to stress about it and just let life happen and try to enjoy it. Because man, if I could have just enjoyed all the times in the past couple of years, there was no reason for me not to. Just try to make the most of what you have and be grateful for what you have, and I hope you feel more content in yourself soon. Alright, thank you for watching this video. Let me know if you want to see more of these. I will see you soon.